Welcome to They Live by Film, a platform dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. I'm Adam Lundy, joined as always by my co-hosts Chris Haskell and Zach Bryant. Hello,
Hey, we
gentlemen.
made it a whole
Hello.
year.
We made it. We made it. The world didn't want us to, but we did it anyway.
2022 in the books almost.
Almost.
Almost. We are recording this on the 18th of December, so any stats and stuff we give you for this year are not necessarily final. A film could come out next week and blow us all out of the water and not destroy all of our top five picks that you hear right now, but screw it. It is what it is. The next 2 weeks are busy as hell, so that's what we're gonna do. So if you remember the 2021 wrap up episode that we did last year, this is basically just a wrap up segment. We're going to talk about some of the favorite films that we watched from this year, some favorite films that we watched are not necessarily from 2022, but we watched during the year. We're going to talk about some pickups. We're going to talk about some of our favorite segments. So yeah, strap in. We're going to just go through all of this kind of piece by piece. I think first off the bat, guys, we're going to talk about our 2022 watches.
Yeah.
That sound good? Cool. Anyone have a particular want to go first?
So are we gonna do five all around, four all around, or are we gonna go straight through our list?
Can I make this easy? I only saw 7 movies from 2022. Can I just give my top 5 and then I'll let y'all take this segment?
Yeah, let's go.
Sure.
Go ahead, Chris.
And also, just while we're talking about recording in the future, I've got like a 30-second kind of funny story that I'll share, give everybody a behind the scenes glimpse into how we do this. So I'm recording. We're gonna have an amazing interview coming out early part of next year with Neon Eagle, which is the new label, which is a mashup, a super group between Mondo Macabro and Cauldron Films, Uncle Jesse from Diabolic DVD. And I just kind of was in the zone and I forgot to give them a heads up. And I said, "Welcome to 2023." And they paused and they said, "Wait, are we supposed to pretend like we're in the future?" They were like, "Are we going to talk about our New Year's and stuff? Like, what are we doing?" And so we had to start over.
That's awesome.
And anyway, so yeah, whatever intro you hear is I think the third take, because then I messed up the second one. So anyways, but yeah, top 5 2022 films. I saw 7. 2 of them were cartoons with my 5-year-old. So these are the 5 that I saw that were not Minions or I don't know, whatever else. So number 5 was Bullet Train. And I couldn't figure out to put that in front of or behind Northman. To me, they were about the same amount of enjoyment. If I had seen 20 films, I don't think either one would make my top 5, but I saw 5. So Bullet Train, Northman, The Batman, which I don't know if this is gonna be controversial, but the more I think about it, I think that film's kind of awesome, and it really leans into what it was trying to do. I liked it more the more I thought about it.
That film annoys the crap out of me.
I get it. It did.
It's supposed to show. It was all about showing Batman as being a good detective, and he's like the worst detective ever because he just listens to whatever crap everyone tells him. Someone tells him one thing, he's like, "Oh shit, okay, that must be true." And then someone else tells him another thing, and he goes, "Oh shit, crap, that must be true," and just spends the whole movie jumping between different people telling him bullshit. He's like
But
the
that
world's
thumb
worst
drive joke
detective.
was awesome.
Paul Dano was awesome. I'll give it
Oh,
that
he
much.
was.
Paul
But
Dano was awesome.
I want to note on Paul Dano, like the thing I was looking forward to, he has to be like the most punched man in cinema history. And somehow he plays in a Batman movie and doesn't get hits. Like, what?
His face is very punchable, though.
Just you don't know whether to hug him or punch him. Number 2, and this is not anything related to, because I only saw 5 films. This movie ruled. Jurassic World Dominion was fantastic.
Agreed.
What a fun piece of genre cinema. Like it reminded me a little bit of the joke that Brian Usna made. I was listening to the commentary of a movie called Ticks, and Brian Usna came in as the producer, so he wasn't like a director, he was a producer of it. And he came in, he saw the script, and he kind of saw like the mock-up, and he was like, "Okay, I get it, but like let me see the ticks." And so they took him to the special effects room, and he was like, "What is this?" He's like, "Make him like 5 times bigger." And then he made up this whole ending where it's like a giant tick. And it's like And it's like that old genre mindset of like whatever's on the poster, like sell the hell out of it. And I think Jurassic World Dominion sold it. There's a lot of dinos in that movie. And then number one, I mean, I think everybody will have the same number one because it's the best movie of the last 5 years. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. So we'll see if that holds true. But I can't imagine any movie being better than that this year. Although I only saw big, massive blockbusters in the theaters, and so I have not seen the new Chan Park-wook movie, which I am disappointed in myself for not doing that. So, anyways, let's keep it going. Thanks, y'all, for letting me go first.
No worries. Do you want to go next, Zach?
Sure, I can go next. So spoiler alert, Everything Everywhere All at Once it actually just got knocked out of my top 10, so it will not be on mine.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's just a mistake. Just look at
We
it.
should
at the
say that Zach watches a hell of a lot more 2022 movies, and he's probably seen more 2022 movies than me and Chris put together.
I
sure.
actually just looked it up because I was curious. I'm at 78 for the year.
Oh shit, no, I'm nowhere near that.
Well, if you guys
my
want, add a little bit of fun, I can give you my bottom 5 as well.
Oh, please do. Yes, that'd be awesome.
So this will be from least worst to absolutely worst. So number 5 there is going to be Blonde. That is the most pretentious drivel I have seen all year. I am a massive fan of the assassination of Jesse James by that coward Robert Ford because of how well the director made really complex characters and put a lot of nuance in it. And then he said, you know what, I'm doing another biopic and ignore everything that was good about my last one and just make it terrible. So he did a good job there. He was successful. Then I watched the Cheerleader Sleepover Slaughter. It's exactly everything it sounds like and not in any fun or good way. Probably the most uncomfortable part of that is like any slasher movie, there's a lot of nudity in it. And you almost like, well, at least I can enjoy it for that. Here's the problem with that is it's very ambiguous what age these girls are. So you're like, are they supposed to be in college?
No.
Now, the actresses are definitely of age. They're like in their 20s. There's no doubt about that looking at them. But you're like, this looks like a high school field and all this other stuff. And then it just sinks it for you the second you see one girl come out with a National Beta shirt. Now, I know, Adam, you're from Ireland. That is a high school thing. Beta is a very much a high school thing. It's not a college thing. So I was like, wow, you could have just made them college kids and at least it would have been a little bit more comfortable while I'm drinking, but thank you. And then it's going to be 365 days this day. I have no idea if that's the third or second one. I think it's the second one. I think I like that one better. Terrible, absolutely awful. Jeepers Creepers Reborn. It's terrible. This movie is so bad. There's a table one of the kills is on. Even that table is CGI'd. Like they couldn't even bother to get a real fucking table to throw somebody on and kill them. The whole movie's CGI at this point. And then the worst is probably the next 365 days. Both of those movies are really bad. Even when you're drunk, they're pretty awful.
What are those? I've never heard of them.
They're like 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, okay.
Shittier.
Oh, okay. I won't subscribe.
I do think they're based on a book series, and they're making a fourth one, and I'm gonna watch it because I might as well see how this fucking ends at this point. But yeah, that's so it's probably cheating to have 2 of those in there, but yeah, those are my bottom 5 for sure. And the only one I had to take off the list because I didn't know if it would count. I'm counting it as a 2022 film, but it actually came out in 2020. In Venezuela, or no, it's Argentina. I'm sorry, called History of the Occult. It's going to end up on Screenbox. I don't know if it has yet. Please watch it. Great movie. Great little horror film about like a government conspiracy where these people are watching like this television show where they almost like a 60 Minutes type thing, and all this like weird witchcraft occult stuff happens. Really cool movie. Wow. But anyway, I'm going to get to my top 5 now. So I appreciate the tangent. So for number 5, I have the one Chris said wouldn't end up on his top 20, which is The Northman. Big fan of Eggers in general. I love his attention to detail with anything like he's done. I love all 3 of his films he's come out with so far. I like Norse stuff. I think I wish the closest I guess I can come up with like a comparison is like Valhalla Rising. It has that this really bleak energy to it that it has a lot of melancholy to it. I dug it. The finale is awesome. It happens on a volcano. I'm going to keep that as spoiler free as I can. It's near a volcano. I'm going to be for it. Number 4 is Jordan Peele's Nope, which is also his third film that came out this year. I know Get Out gets like all the love when it comes out. I like Get Out a lot. I think it's really good. I thought Us was really disappointing overall. I think it could have used more time in the writing. Nope is his best film. Like it's 100% for me his best movie. It's essentially his version of Tremors. So I'm all for it. Nope is great. It's a lot of fun. Really excited to rewatch it here soon. Number 3 just got added to the list is Avatar: The Way of Water. I wasn't really shocked. It was actually Chris, you'll be happy to know it's the movie that knocked Everything Everywhere All at Once out of the top 10 for me. So I had a blast with it. I've been excited for it for a while, and it's I'm actually have tickets to see it again tomorrow. See it in IMAX. That's going to be the best way to do it. Don't waste it on 2D. I'm not a big advocate for 3D, but the film is better for it. It's better for the 3D. It's just great to see a little bit of spectacle that I feel like we don't get a lot in American cinema anymore. I guess the last like true blockbuster in American cinema that I loved and thought was great was Mad Max Fury Road. So this is probably the best one I've seen since then. And number 2, a non-American blockbuster that was phenomenal was RRR, which I regret not being able to see in theaters. I saw it 4 times this year. It's fantastic. If you want a good introduction to Bollywood, RRR is the way to go. And my number 1, which has pretty much been my number 1 since March, is another one that just has one letter, X. Good throwback to a slasher film with, I think, a pretty cool like discussion on like exploitation and art and how those kind of interact and all that using the porn stuff. And I think it's great. So that is my final. So we'll see how different Adams is. I think your number 1 changed all of a sudden. So I'm curious. At least I think it did from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I would have really struggled to do a 2022 list if not for the last 11 days where I've had 3 films enter my top 5. So it's worked out pretty well the last 11 days of viewing for me. So my number 5, funnily enough, your number 1 was X. My number 5 is Pearl. I preferred Pearl to X personally. I thought amazing character piece. I love the sort of callbacks to the old kind of Joan Crawford dramas from the 40s and the 50s. Really well put together film. I get why people might prefer X. I just prefer Pearl. It's a bit classier, which is a bit more up my street maybe. Number 4 is one of the ones I've just entered. It's Banshees of Inisherin, the new Martin McDonagh film with Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. Again, really, and this is kind of a common thread for some of these films in this list. Just a really great character piece. Really nice to see an Irish film doing so well kind of everywhere. It seems to be getting a lot of love across the board. I think it was nominated for a good few Golden Globes. It'll probably get nominated for a few Oscars, so that's always nice, especially with it being an all-Irish cast. A lot of the time when these kind of old Ireland dramas get made, they're made by Americans for Americans with diddly eye accents and all that crap by American actors doing bad Irish accents. So it was nice to see a film that's purely Irish. Reminded me of another great Irish film by Martin McDonagh's brother, John Michael McDonagh, called Calvary with Brendan Gleeson, which is a really fantastic film about sort of tackling Ireland's rejection of Catholicism after the abuse scandals and stuff. So really, really great film. It kind of reminded me of that. Banshees of Inisherin, really great character piece. Darkly humorous, but also really it really hits some dark notes as well. My number 3, Chris will be happy, is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Super fun film, incredibly fun film. It's the right level of batshit and emotionally endearing. It just has that balance really, really well. Really greatly made film. One of those ones you can just go back and rewatch and still have the same amount of fun every time and pick up new things. So I really enjoyed that. And then the last two films are ones I watched in the last week. The second film was my number one film of the year until the film I watched yesterday. So number two is Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave. Amazing film, really well put together, really tight sort of story that really reminded me of Vertigo in a lot of ways. About a detective who's kind of obsessed with a woman who's kind of harboring dark secrets. Really gave me Vertigo vibes.
So Chris will hate it.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, it's a great film. The ending absolutely floored me. It was literally, it was my favorite film of the year up until the film I watched yesterday, which is a debut feature by a director called Charlotte Wells called Aftersun, which, similar to Decision to Leave, is being distributed here by Mubi, but I think it's being distributed by A24 in North America. Which, Christ, this film, I sat down and watched it. Neve was going to watch it with me the first couple of minutes. She wasn't really feeling it. She went upstairs to watch something else, and I came up and I was just like, I am a broken man after this movie. It's just such a poignant, melancholic, but also like really sort of sweet and endearing at times. Just look at a flawed individual, Paul Mescal, which is the Irish actor which had his breakout in Normal People, a TV series came out during a couple of years ago, which I think I talked about on this podcast at some point. But it's a really good portrait of just a flawed father, a father figure who really tries his best, but has his own sort of demons that he fights with. And the film is plainly told from the point of view of his 11-year-old daughter as they're on a holiday in Turkey together. So you just have that mix of sort of childhood sort of idolization of your father while also sort of picking up nuances that not everything is okay with him as well. It's a really stunning film. Honestly, I know it might seem silly to have a film I literally saw less than 24 hours ago jump to number one, but it floored me. I thought Decision to Leave floored me. Aftersun floored me.
What's the name of it again, Adam? Sorry.
Aftersun.
Aftersun. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Zach.
I was just going to say there's two on yours. I know I wish I had been able to get to. I really wanted to get to Decision to Leave, but I have made a rule for myself that I would finally watch The Handmaiden before I watched it. And I haven't done that either. And I really wanted to watch Banshee. It's on HBO Max now, because Three Billboards, that was his previous film, was probably in my top 3 for 2017 when it released. And I love all of his films anyway. I just hadn't got around to it yet.
That's why I'd made it my business to watch Aftersun last night, because I had a feeling that I would really like it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but I thought, okay, I'm gonna watch this tonight because you never know, it might sneak into my top 5. I suppose what was gonna be my fifth? My fifth was probably gonna be Top Gun Maverick or Scream 5, which I know not everybody loved, but I loved it. But that's probably because I'm biased because I love the Scream movies. But it would have been either Scream 5 or Top Gun Maverick would have been my fifth, and everything else would have just moved up a space. But I thought Aftersun looks good, looks interesting. I'll give it a watch before we record this episode, and I'm glad I did.
I mean, you can't feel too bad. My number 3 was like from a movie I saw 2 days ago, so it happens.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to give a bonus shout out to a 2022 film. It's a terrible film, awful movie, but it is so it's so hilarious, but in a way that they obviously did not intend. It is unintentionally hilarious, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
Oh, that movie's great. I love it.
It's so bad. It's so terrible. Awful movie, but so funny. So unintentionally hilarious. There are moments in that film where I'm like, how did they write this down? Like the part where a Gen Zer tells Leatherface he's gonna get cancelled before he gets chainsawed. What the fuck?
And
So
you
funny.
see, I at least knew you'd give it bonus points because I think the movie is like 71 minutes.
Oh,
the
it's so short. Yeah. I
Yeah, it's
watched
like
it on my exercise bike. Yeah. Hilarious movie. Yeah, I would highly recommend you watch it, Chris, because it's so terrible. But what's great is that all the characters are awful, so you don't feel bad watching them get ripped to shreds. But that's one thing with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, they're so brutal, those films. So like, like you kind of feel bad for some of the characters, what's going to happen to them. I don't feel bad about any of these characters getting viciously murdered. And it also has the weirdest message of 2022 because the main character is shown to have survived a school shooting. So she's like wary around guns. But then like she just like, uses a gun to mow down Leatherface. Like the message is guns are bad unless you're shooting the bad guy.
Welcome to Texas, motherfucker.
It's such a bizarre movie. I would highly recommend watching it. It's just batshit. It is insane.
Well, and even in like as bad as the TCM franchise is, it's still middle of the road with how bad some of them are. Like I think I have it dead middle in my ranking for TCM.
Yeah, that's the thing, Adam. You say I should watch it. I will. I'm going through the Hellraiser franchise right now.
I'm so sorry. Apologize.
I haven't seen anything past the second one. I don't think I want to.
The new one's fine. Watch the new one. That's the only one I would say.
The third one is I was so annoyed with it. It's just it's horrible. But the fourth one is by the guy that went on to make the Doctor Strange movies.
Dr. Scott Derrickson. Yeah, he just did
really?
one. Yeah, and it's okay. It's probably the most watchable after.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like I was expecting it just this whole nother level of terrible. So I'm just about to start with Hellseeker, I think it's called.
Downhill, man. It's going downhill for a while.
Well, there's this guy named Rick Boda who directed 3, and I think his are the ones that are derided so much. So I'm not super looking forward to that. But after that, I'm going to get to the Psycho franchise, and then after that, probably Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I want to try to watch all of them just because there's a whole bunch of gaps I have. And like for Psycho, I've only seen the first one, so I just want to try to finally see a lot of these franchises.
And I mean, honestly, Psycho is probably a good one to go to after Hellraiser. That's a really bad franchise that's really, really long to a pretty solid franchise that's really short.
And I can finish off with The Birds. I think there's only 2 of those, right?
Oh my God.
And I recommend neither of them. So if we're all good with 2022 releases, want to talk about the sort of best films we saw that didn't come out in 2022, just ones that we watched?
Yeah, could we have like a just a really brief discussion about 2022, because there was something that I've noticed that I want to see if y'all agree or not.
Yeah,
because there's the 2000s and like the teens. I think although there are great movies made during that time, generally there's like this kind of public outcry that theaters were dead and like there wasn't anything original coming out of Hollywood, and like there's no good movies, and blah 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 blah, right? And the good movies that were coming out in festivals weren't getting distribution, and like so. I feel like we're kind of coming back from that a little bit. Like it seems like just think about the variety of the movies we've talked about just between the 3 of us. I don't know. It feels like it feels like this is going back to a period where whether it's between A24 or whether it's RRR coming in from India and really like doing well, but it just feels like we're kind of in a little bit of an uptick again as far as like variety and quality and what's coming out into the theaters.
Yeah, like the old sort of studios, like obviously Fox until their takeover, Paramount, things like that. It's kind of shown in the last like 5 or so years that a film doesn't need to be produced by them to be successful. Places like A24, Neon from distribution point of view, even Mubi now in the last couple of years have been distributing a lot of films that have been getting not just numbers and seats in theaters, but also a lot of critical acclaim to go alongside them, and then word of mouth spreads and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd have to agree. Because of those companies, and Blumhouse as well, from a horror point of view, gets a lot of traction. Yeah, a lot of those companies being so successful in the last 5 or so years has certainly helped with this more varied sort of theater experience. You know, I know when a new Marvel movie comes out or a new Star Wars movie comes out, or like Avatar at the moment, like I looked at my local theater listings and it's all Avatar. You can't see anything else from this week onwards. It's all Avatar. And I know that can be frustrating. It's certainly frustrating for me because Neve passed her driving test last week. So I'm like, oh, great, I can finally go to the theater more often because, you know, we can drive, we don't have to rely on buses and stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's see what's on. Oh, it's all Avatar. Okay.
Which means you
So
should go see Avatar.
I see. I probably might. I say I probably might. I don't have much love. I don't have much care for the first one, but I also haven't seen it since it came out, which was when I was like 15. So, but yeah, like I think we have the sort of second tier down studios, so not the old guard, but like the likes of, you know, Neon, Mubi, A24, Blumhouse. I think we have them to thank for this more varied theater experience.
Yeah.
Well, the big thing that's kind of been a surprise is Disney. You know, God, you think about like 2018, 2019, you sat there and think, how long can they be on top of this mountain? Because, I mean, I think it was 2019, they had 7 movies that made over $1 billion.
Jeez.
Fast forward to 2022, they've had 0. And it's fascinating to see. Honestly, the stuff that made over $1 billion this year, I have kind of been surprising and not so surprising. Number 1 movie of the year right now is Top Gun Maverick, which was going to make money because Tom Cruise, but I don't think people quite expected the way it was going to make money, and that's been very fascinating. I wish I got to see it in theaters. I have not got to see it yet.
And I think word of mouth has a lot to do with that, because Top Gun, you know, it's a famous movie, but it's not the most beloved, you know, 80s movie of all time. I'm sure they could have made sequels to a lot of 80s movies, but it wouldn't have made as much money because it was actually good. I think that was the biggest surprise, that it's actually good. It's, in my opinion, it's better than the original. Yeah. And you have a lot of people like me who was kind of dragged to it because Neve really likes it. She loved the original. I've watched it a few times with her. She kind of dragged me to see it. I had low expectations. And then I was telling everybody that I saw, go see it while it's in the theater. It's an amazing theater experience. It's one of like the great sort of films to see in a theater with the proper sound and everything like that. So I think word of mouth really helped that film a lot, because you had people, like I said, like me, who was telling literally everybody. The weekend after I saw it, there wasn't a single person I met where I said, have you seen the new Top Gun? Oh, you should go see it in the cinema. It's really great. And that would have pushed a lot of people who would have normally waited for it to come out in streaming to go and actually see it in the theater and experience it properly.
And for someone who follows, this is a little bit of a tangent. For someone who follows box office, I find that way more exciting to watch. Like, I'll always give credit to Endgame for what it accomplished for its like $1.2 billion worldwide opening weekend. That will probably never be touched because that is phenomenal. But there was no excuse for that movie not to make $3 billion. It should have been the first film to do it. That was the most front-loaded movie I've ever seen. So there's so much drop-off the next like month. That is, you know, something like Top Gun. It's going to have a modest opening weekend, but it just sticks around forever. It's the same thing the first Avatar did. It made like, on a domestic, it made $77 million and ended up making 11 times that over its lifetime, and just domestically.
That's awesome.
So for someone who likes the box office stuff, I think that's way more interesting to watch than tons of money all in and now it's gone. Disney's kind of famous for that. They can get an opening weekend. They can get people to sit in the theater the first week, but it lives and dies by that first week too. So I think that's kind of catching up with them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I haven't even seen the new Black Panther film, and I'm someone who's there the first week of every, you know, Marvel release, and I haven't even seen the new Black Panther film.
Yeah, it was very disappointing. It didn't come anywhere close to $1 billion. Like nowhere. Like Doctor Strange 2 made more money, and people hated that one. I liked it, but people hated it.
I liked it as well. And I've heard good things about Black Panther. I liked the first one a lot. It's just I'm kind of burnt out on Marvel, which I didn't think it would happen, but it did happen. I'm just kind of burnt out with it.
But this is the problem, right? I think I know I've kind of been like back and forth on Marvel movies. I've been a little hard on them, but I still watch every single one. Like I appreciate what they're doing from this perspective of giving like Taika Waititi a chance to direct a blockbuster. Turns out he's pretty good at it. James Gunn a chance to direct a blockbuster. Like it's cool. Like I like kind of what they're doing. Phase 4 has been probably the least creative in terms of like, they've taken some chances with like, some of the Eternals or whatever, but it the movies have not been rated as high. There's not an obvious thread tying them all together in the same way that it was done previously, or it's very loose. And I think that's a bad combination because by the fourth phase, there's probably going to be a little bit of fatigue on a franchise anyways. And now they're having the least, what's perceived as, whether or not it's true, but what's perceived as the least creative phase in the fourth phase. And so I think by now you're getting like, people are sort of saying, well, what's going on? Like, I don't even understand where this is going. Like, there's not that big event that it's building up to, like the Avengers or like
Well,
Thanos,
see, this is the thing. This is the thing that a lot of people were worried about when they started making the Disney Plus shows. There is a thread,
Okay, yeah.
but you wouldn't know about it unless you were watching the shows as well.
And
So there actually is a thread, but we're now alienating people like Chris who only sees the movies by having those threads start and move through this TV series. You're actually now missing out on crucial bits of information.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
The problem, this is kind of going to the TV shows, that I think has also hurt it, not in the sense of like storyline or anything, but like Avengers always used to feel like an event film. Like, go to the cinema to see this. And I think like the TV shows almost take away that sense of spectacle, because I think it kind of opens the veil. That's like you've been watching a long running TV show for 15 years. It's just been in the cinema. Because how different are they at this point? I think it makes a difference to some people. Like I don't feel like they're as big of events now that it's like, oh well, I can watch all this on Disney Plus, and of course they all come to Disney Plus very quickly now. I don't know. I think it's taken away a little bit of that event feel that that kind of ended, I think, with Endgame. Like, as much as I like Doctor Strange 2, it didn't feel like an event. The new Thor didn't feel like an event, and Black Panther didn't feel like an event. Like, they just, I don't know, that sense is kind of gone for me. Even if I've never been the biggest Marvel guy, Civil War, Endgame, Infinity War, the first, even Ultron, which people didn't like, they still felt like an event to go to.
Yeah. Right, we better move on. Enough Marvel bashing for now.
For now.
I suppose we'll go backwards now through the other films, will we? If I want me to start with my favorite watches of 2022 that weren't released in 2022.
Sure.
Okay, so number 5 for me was Raging Bull, Martin Scorsese flick. I've started sort of semi-slowly trying to sort of see the Scorsese films that I haven't seen. I say started slowly, this might be the only one I've watched. But I'd already seen a good chunk of his films before anyway. But Raging Bull was fantastic. Exceptionally well-made film. De Niro is amazing in it. And I love the boxing scenes. They're so the style he used for the boxing scenes, kind of making it sort of time appropriate for when it's set, just in terms of how the camera is situated and how it looks. Boxing scenes are amazing in that film, and obviously, like I said, De Niro is fantastic. Number 4 is a film I watched quite early in the year for the Criterion Challenge, and it's the Jean Renoir film Tony. I'm a big Renoir fan anyway. Grand Illusion is probably my favorite film by him, but honestly, this film comes like super close. It's a really incredible watch because it came out in 1935, but it feels 15 years ahead of its time in terms of how it uses the camera. It's super similar to like Italian neorealism, which was still another 10 years away at this stage. And it feels really influential on the new wave as well, just in terms of how it's cut together and stuff like that. So when you watch it, you genuinely would not think it's from 1935. It feels at least 15 years older than what it should be. So it's a really revolutionary film, but also really enjoyable as an interesting story. And yeah, Jean Renoir rules. He's awesome. He's one of the greats of all time, and I feel like he kind of gets underrated these days.
we talk about a lot of directors, especially a lot of French ones from the 50s and the 60s, but a lot of them wouldn't exist without Renoir. He's the godfather of French cinema. Number 3 was the Luis Buñuel film Los Olvidados, or The Young and the Damned, which is an amazing, again, sort of neorealist film set in Mexico, in this really poor district, and just about the lives of these people living in these poor district in Mexico. Amazing film, really well put together. I hope and pray in 2023 that it gets a remaster and gets a Blu-ray release, because well, it already has a remaster by Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Foundation, which I was very surprised when I was reading a list of films that the foundation had funded remasterings for, and that was on there. So I'm like, it's on here. Why is nobody releasing this? And I can only assume it's down to rights or something like that. From a distribution point of view, there must be some kind of issues over
Didn't
ownership.
we get a wink and a nod that it's coming out next year from a beloved label?
We did. Well, we got a wink and a nod that they were trying to work on it, but they were having issues with the rights holders. So we'll have to see. It's probably my most wanted film in any in any format, really. I had to watch a crappy rip on YouTube, and even that was phenomenal. So yeah, I hope for a release for that in 2023. My number 2 was again a film that was long awaited. It's Chess of the Wind, the Iranian film, which I expected to be like a quiet family drama. It's not. It's Hitchcock in Iran, is the best way to put it. It's a great film. Mubi released it here earlier in the year. I think it's included in the most recent World Cinema box set on Criterion. So it might end up on the Criterion channel maybe sometime next year. I know a lot of the films in those box sets end up on the channel. So if it does, I'd highly recommend checking it out if you do see it show up there. Really, really great film. Really biting social commentary, really well made, and a really interesting sort of thriller story. Like I said, it's kind of like a Hitchcock, or it's probably closer actually to Les Diaboliques, in terms of like the actual storyline itself. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. And then the number 1, which I think genuinely, it took me so long to watch it. I've had it on my shelf for about 2 or 3 years, and I never got around to watching it because I expected it to be a little sort of stuffy or overlong or whatever. But it is genuinely one of the best films ever made, and that is Harakiri. This film is just nuts. It's so engaging, so engrossing. You wouldn't think a film about a samurai asking to commit, suicide would be interesting. It's amazing. The fight scenes that happen in it are incredible. The main actor, which his name is escaping me, is the same guy who was I'm gonna just look up his name just so I can actually give it to you, because you would recognize his name. He's been in some Kurosawa films as well.
Armie Hammer?
No, not quite.
Close. I think you're on the right track.
It's Tatsuya Nakadai. He's in loads of Kurosawa films like Yojimbo, Ran, Seven Samurai. He's just as frequent in Kurosawa films as Mifune. But he's the main character in this film, and he's amazing. Like I said, it's genuinely one of the best films ever made. I don't know how it doesn't end up more highly ranked on this, They Shoot Pictures and Sight and Sound and stuff, because it just blew me away. If there's one film I recommend to, especially to you, Chris, who does Kurosawa films, highly recommend Harakiri.
Oh, this guy. Yeah, he always plays that stoic kind of
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's like the opposite number samurai in Yojimbo.
Yeah.
So he's the one who fights Mifune. Yeah, he's the main character in this, and he's incredible. It's just an incredible film. It's so well made. The tracking shots in it are phenomenal. It's just the framing in general is just amazing. The mise-en-scène, cinematography, literally everything about this film is a knockout. It is, like I said, genuinely one of the best films ever made. Highly, highly recommend it.
Awesome.
What about you, Zach?
All right. So see. Let me pull up my list. Okay. So the five I did, and I'd probably relook at the list now, and it would be completely different. But I'm going to go with the five I came up with this week. So number five, I have I think it's 2018 film called Prospect. It was released by Gunpowder and Sky. Chris was nice enough to sell me his Gunpowder and Sky, and I got to watch it there. Really lo-fi sci-fi.
Yeah.
You can tell it's not a huge budget, but the creativity with it is like really phenomenal. Pedro Pascal, who's one of my favorite actors working today, he does a great job, and everyone will bring up Mandalorian when he ends up with The Last of Us. But if you want to see the the best of the thing he's done, where he's played a father figure to someone who's not his kid, Prospect's a really good one. He's a very interesting character. Brings a lot of depth to it. Highly recommend if you're into that sort of thing, where if you want the low budget sci-fi, it's probably one of the better ones I've seen in a while. Number four, I'm going to go with God Told Me To, which is a Larry Cohen film. I actually thought I saw this last year, but saw this like the fourth day of the year, so it got to slip in real quick. Probably my favorite Larry Cohen film now. It's very fascinating. I would say, as far as like the closest to artsy Larry Cohen ever got is probably God Told Me To, but it's still got his fair share of genre defining stuff. It's a lot of fun. I don't quite know what the end means, but hey, it's kind of fun to think about. And I think Blue Underground put out a 4K earlier this year. I haven't got to watch it yet, but I'm sure it looks great. Number three, I'm going to go with Extreme Prejudice, Walter Hill film that is essentially The Wild Bunch. Not as good as The Wild Bunch, very few things are, but it's still a lot of fun. It's got a great cast. It's got like Powers Booth. It's got Clancy Brown. Really high power cast for it, and if you're looking for an 80s version of The Wild Bunch set in the modern day, at least modern day of the 80s, it's going to be hard to really beat that. Number two is Fish and Cat by that director whose name I can't say. Is it
Shahram Mokri?
Yeah, that guy. It was the first film of his I got to watch. It was probably the reason I bought that set from Deaf Crocodile. It is a slasher movie without any of the slasher elements. It's almost like this deconstruction of the genre. I talked about it a little bit. I won't go too far because I talked about it in depth on the modern slashers episode we did earlier this year. But really fascinating movie of a one take. I'm not a huge fan of one take cinema. I think it's masturbatory in a lot of sense. And it's just not needed. It's just a way to brag. But I think in Fish and Cat, it works so uniquely and so well because it's not only a one take, it's a one take with the added element that it's non-linear. And the way he goes about that makes it so fascinating. And, there's probably a lot of discussion about why he chooses to do it this way, but I think it does tie in well to what goes on within the film about these, kids who are camping for a kite festival. And there's obviously some devious people who are cooks out in the woods, apparently based on partially a true story. Great film, seriously. I need to sit down and watch his other two. His film Invasion is I guess you'd call like an alien vampire type movie, which is set in a similar way. But Fish and Cat to me is maybe it's because I saw it first, but it's great. And then my number one is another one I saw in January that I thought was last year, but got to sneak in, was Onibaba. Probably a super influential horror that has just kind of passed me by for a long time. Because I bought the Criterion a while ago and never got around to it. I bought that one and his other one.
Kuroneko, is it?
Yeah, that's it.
They're both amazing. If you haven't seen Kuroneko yet, definitely get to it.
I did watch it. I need to sit down and watch it again. I don't think I was in the right mood for it because I liked it, but I wasn't like I watched it right after Onibaba, and I'm just like, doesn't quite reach it for me.
Yeah, they're two very different films. Onibaba is much more sort of paranoid, but sort of suffocating, whereas Kuroneko makes great use of lighting and staging and stuff. There's some incredible sort of lighting and camera work in Kuroneko. They're both pretty even for me. Both great films, though.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how much that mask has been used in horror. Like The Exorcist
Yeah.
is probably a big one. I mean, it's it's funny watching it now and then watching all these different like horror movies for decades past, and you're like, they like Ani Baba, so that's really cool. But yeah, I've definitely put that as my number one. It's definitely one that's in my like top 100. So yeah, that's my top five for the year. What about you, Chris?
No, I'm just picking up on some trends. So we've had a Japanese film and an Iranian film so far, as well as some ones that make sense of how we individually like it. I wonder if I can keep that trend up. For me, it's just really three films. It's Taboo 1, 2, and 3.
Oh well, I'm glad. I'm glad you just got those in at the very end of the year.
Yeah. No. Let's see. So I have I'm gonna keep up the trend. It's funny you talk about Mokri. I almost put his first film Ashkan in, so I'm just gonna talk about it briefly as um as maybe it'd be like a number 6 or 7. But do you remember like kind of the feeling you had when y'all first saw like Memento or maybe Pulp Fiction, where you have to watch the whole movie to understand the timelines and how the stories kind of come together?
Yeah,
It has that exact vibe. Like you watch it in the beginning. I mean, it's lower budget. It's quieter, I would say, than those. But it's the exact same vibe. Where in the beginning you're just like, what's going on, and who are these characters? And the character named Ashkan doesn't come up until like an hour in. And his storyline is the one that winds up tying all the threads together. But it jumps around time in very creative ways. Really cool film. The next one for me is Fish and Cat. So it made me extremely excited to see him. But only reason it didn't finish in the top 5 is for the first time this year I saw Taste of Cherry. So staying in Iran for a minute, just I, yeah, you, you know I tend to like slow cinema. I think more than I'm always surprised by it. And I don't know if Taste of Cherry necessarily qualifies for slow cinema, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's action packed. But the way that Kiarostami writes, I just I don't know that I've ever just sat down and been drawn in by a script. And the performances in his movie are always good, but it's the script, and the shots and the setting, and it's the filmmaking, truly. I think more than the actors in his movies. And Taste of Cherry I thought about for a long time after it ended. What an amazing movie. I thought I had, but I'd never seen Amadeus before. Have y'all seen it?
yeah, I saw it in high
I think
school. Yeah,
I think I watched it in school as well, in music class, something like that. Yeah. So I won't be able to remember anything about it.
Yeah.
copy somewhere over there. I just can't remember where it's at.
I kind of avoided it because I'm not a huge fan of historical biopics anyways. Like I didn't like A Night to Remember and Titanic, because the whole time I was just like, yeah, I know the story. Like, oh no, rich people or like poor people or no, yeah, okay. But this one, it lives up to all the reputation. Like it is amazing. And the person they chose to play Amadeus was one of the characters in the Revenge of the Nerds movies. And so he's like this comedian by background, and it's the perfect choice because Amadeus wasn't this stuffy elitist type. Like he was a rebel and he was goofy and he was like, like he was an asshole, and like it was just the perfect casting choice. I loved it. Um, couldn't love that movie more. I'm gonna cheat slightly, so I apologize. I saw 3 musicals in the year that I couldn't really separate. So Young Girls of Rochefort, Red Shoes, and Le Million are the 3 I'm going to group under my favorite musicals of the year. Um, all loved for different reasons, but we don't talk about Rene Clair. He's another one we don't talk about probably as much as other directors. But Le Million is amazing. Like if it was, well, I don't know if it was released today. That's probably not true. I mean, it's fully a movie from 1931 or whatever, but it's very, very good. Highly entertaining, great music. Yeah, really good. I saw Goodfellas for the first time. I was surprised. I had sworn I had seen that
First
before.
time.
Yeah,
Whoa, that's
but
pretty crazy.
um, I was debating whether to put Last Temptation of Christ in the top 5, but I had seen that before. But yeah, good. I think Goodfellas is. I like it more than The Godfather for sure. Like I like the characters better. I think the
Yeah.
stakes are higher. It's Joe Pesci is. I understand why he's famous now. I never quite got it. Like he always
You
just
didn't
seemed
get
a
it with
little.
My Cousin Vinny. That's his best role.
Yeah, he was okay in it, but I think Goodfellas, he was just like he was so magnetic on the screen. Like he's such a psychopath. I just think he was. I don't know. Ray Liotta was great. My favorite thing about Goodfellas, I won't go into like a big dissection, but the way that laughter is used in that movie is unbelievable because every time they laugh and they laugh like super hard, there's a story being told just in the way that they're laughing. I know it sounds weird, but I like, damn, that movie's good.
Yeah, great
Uh,
film. One of the all-time best films ever.
yeah. So to me, it earns the reputation. Unlike something which will go into my least favorite film here, was when we shift topics in a moment. But number one for me, I just saw it, and it's you mentioned Adam. You mentioned something along the lines of the film has no business being as good as it is, or maybe that was the way that I heard what you said when you were talking about one of yours. But there's a movie called Ordette from Dreyer. And I wasn't a huge fan of Day of Wrath when I saw it, so I was like, okay, I needed to see more of these. Like, there's a trilogy that Criterion released of like plays that Dreyer then adapted into film, and Ordette was the second one in that trilogy. And it doesn't sound like it should be good. Like it's just two families basically bickering over different versions of the Christian faith. And then there's a moment in the movie where there's there's a woman who's pregnant and she has complications in the delivery, and it shows the hypocrisy of everything they've said up to that point, and it highlights like the way that people talk about faith and how it's personal to them versus truly miracles and the way that it's supposed to be, like in their minds, the way that faith looks versus the reality of how it actually plays out when the stakes get high. And it's just, I don't know, like I don't, it's so good. Like it's perfect, I think. And the way that the characters are set up is entertaining enough to kind of keep the attention. And then when it gets to the third act and everything starts to fall apart, it's just handled masterfully. So it blew me away. So yeah, those are my top 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna be getting to Ordette in the new year as I make my way towards finalizing the Sight and Sound list.
Mm.
Dreyer is a great director. Despite his name, his films are not dry at all, as you might assume. He makes really, really great films. I'm disappointed you didn't like Day of Wrath as much. Maybe on a rewatch, you might enjoy it a little bit more. I think that film's phenomenal. But yeah, he's a great director. Probably again, like Renoir, doesn't get as much clout as he should.
Yeah, I agree. We saw Vampire with the film club, right?
Yes. So that's
Yeah.
2 Dreyer films we watched with the film club this year: Vampire and Day of Wrath.
Yeah, Vampire was just, I mean, now that I think about it, maybe that could make my top 5 too. I mean, I don't know. Like there's everything he touches is gold. I mean, Joan of Arc, I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. That film absolutely blew me away.
Yeah,
Um,
fantastic film. It's just the camera angles that are so alien. Even now,
yeah,
like it's nearly 100 years since it came out, and the camera angles he uses are just insane.
yeah. So
Cool.
you brought up Renoir, I think, as like the guy that's influential but doesn't get talked about as much. But this is Dreyer's right up there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think they're two of the sort of godfathers of cinema that people kind of forget are as influential as they actually are.
Yeah.
They influenced the guys who became influential, is probably the
Yes.
best way to put it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I suppose speaking of Vampire, I can actually segue pretty easily into favorite pickups of the year, if you want to jump straight in there.
Yeah,
Of
sure.
course.
So,
Cool. So yeah, Vampire was one of the pickups. A couple of mine, two of mine were released by Eureka, which is a label I've been advocating for many years for us Region B collectors. If you're someone who's frustrated that you don't get as many criterions as Region A does, then Eureka should be your backup plan because they put out amazing films in amazing packaging with some great special features. Vampire was one of their special releases that they did this year. Came in a nice hefty box with some really great bonus features. The other pickup I got from Eureka, which I talked about in the last episode of the podcast, was our 4K release of Dr. Caligari. Not going to go too deep into it because obviously I spoke about it a couple of times now in the last few months. But again, beautiful packaging. It's great that they're releasing 4K now. I hope they start doing it very often, especially with older films. Once again, their packaging is always 10 out of 10. I love the fact that they use a thicker cardboard for their digipacks, not that thin flimsy stuff that a lot of other companies use. I never have to worry about it getting broken if I'm moving stuff around. I know it's always going to be nice and intact. Another pickup was one I got from Criterion, and this is less about the features and stuff and just more being happy that it exists on Blu-ray now in a remaster. Lost Highway. Of course, it's a film that I've loved for a long time, that I've been wanting a really good release for a long time. So I'm glad we finally have it. Obviously, at the time of recording, Inland Empire was just announced as well, so we're getting ever closer to the David Lynch box set that Criterion may put out at some point. But I'm glad that we have Lost Highway. It's probably his most undervalued film, apart from maybe The Straight Story. I really, really loved it. Whenever I've watched it, it's been about 5 years since I've seen it. I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and watch the Blu-ray because I only just got it a couple of weeks back. But I'm glad it exists. I'm glad I can have it in my hands. Another pickup I'm really happy about is another 4K, which is the 4K release of Citizen Kane, not by Criterion, the one that came out in Region B. Beautiful restoration. I watched it recently and I was stunned by how good it looked. It's obviously a phenomenal film. It's famous for a reason. I don't need to talk your ear off about why Citizen Kane is good. We all know it's good. But yeah, the restoration was phenomenal. Has some really nice extras. Again, some nice packaging. I know that the Criterion release packaging, cover, whatever artwork is very controversial. I happen to like the big K. I think I actually prefer it to Orson Welles' face, which is what the packaging that I have for this release. But yeah, it's really nice release all around. And then my last one is again something I talked about fairly recently as a pickup, and it's just this goes to something I've mentioned a lot of times about why boutique Blu-ray companies are so important and so vital, because they give allowance for films to get really nice releases that would never ever get nice releases in normal circumstances. So the one I'm talking about is Ghost Watch, which was a BBC sort of mockumentary that came out in the 90s that has never been shown on BBC ever again, but it gets this nice chunky Blu-ray special edition and hard cardboard and a booklet and loads of special features. And it's just great that this industry exists. We're very blessed as film lovers that pretty much any film, if the rights can be gotten to it, pretty much any film can have a really, really nice release to sell on your shelf. As opposed to 20 years ago where you were lucky to get any special editions, even for the biggest films. Yeah. You were lucky to get anything close to this, whereas now pretty much anything can get a really nice special edition. So I love that. I love that about this industry, and I hope it continues. I hope the bubble doesn't burst. There's obviously more and more companies popping up every year, which we know about more than anyone because we end up talking to pretty much all the new ones as they pop up, which is great to see. So yeah, long may it continue. Hopefully then we'll just get to discover more and more films as time goes on that would have been lost to time otherwise.
There's a million examples of what you're talking about, but can I just sharing kind of a funny story? I the next one up in my queue that I'm gonna watch tonight is a 3-disc limited edition of a Swedish horror film called Evil Ed. That includes the normal cut or the original cut plus a 99-minute special cut plus a 3-hour making of documentary. And I'm just like, I mean, for every Citizen K release that comes out, which, like you said, may or may not have got the special treatment on like a 50th anniversary or 100th anniversary or whatever, all of a sudden we're getting that same treatment for Evil Ed, and I don't know, it makes me smile. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Like I would never watch 99% of the films that get these limited editions from crazy companies, but I'm still glad that they exist. Like the Taboo films you talked about before, or Bat Pussy. These are films I would never ever watch, but I'm happy for people.
Watch it.
I don't think I will. But I'm happy for people who do like to watch them that they get to have these amazing special editions of these insane films.
I won't defend the Taboo films, but I cannot stand for Bat Pussy slander on this podcast. That is the funniest movie ever. I don't know that I've ever laughed so hard. And Zach, have you seen it yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, all right.
It's on the Arrow Player. I can literally watch it anytime I want. It's on the Arrow Player as part of their AGFA collaboration.
Just make sure your parents are home and turn the volume way up. Anyways, go ahead. What about you, Zach? What did you pick up?
It's always tough to remember what you actually bought like throughout the year. So I don't know if these are necessarily definitely my favorites, but they would be in a top 10 regardless. So for one of the ones I got, I'll kind of put at the bottom, mostly because it's the issue that it has a really cool packaging idea, but in execution, it's really, really flawed, which might sum up the show pretty well, which is the Twin Peaks A to Z complete collection. I appreciate so much about it. Yeah, the packaging. I like the idea of the packaging. I just don't think they actually tested the packaging before they threw it out there.
Mine is destroyed. My box is literally ripped to shreds. It doesn't even close properly. It was such a shit show. Like the company I bought it from even refunded me half my order because it was so bad. They couldn't replace it because it was on sale and it sold out. So they just offered to refund me half of it because I'd sent them pictures. So
yeah, and I mean, mine had a little damage, but it was nothing I couldn't fix when it came in. So I got a bit luckier than you did. But yeah, it's definitely had like some ideas that were really cool, and I love having the first episode on 4K. I'm glad to have it. I wish they had done it slightly different, but I'm going to put that in my top because it's Twin Peaks. So, my number 4, I will go with a movie I already had, but of course, in the nature of this, we're going to keep rebuying stuff as long as they keep coming out. I had a standard edition from Mondo Vision for Possession, which is it is a top 10 film for me. And it really, really ate at me for like 2 years that I didn't have the really nice one. So I went out and got it, and it's great packaging. It made me actually want to go through all of Mondo Vision's like really special edition stuff. Just really put together box with like a velvet slip and everything else. Just a really cool one. Then we'll go with BFI. I don't own a lot of BFI. I think this was the third thing because I have the Devil's DVD. I won't rant about that. And then the Werner Herzog collection they did, which is fine. It's kind of a thin one, but they put out the Proposition this year on 4K. Which looks really phenomenal. I haven't got to watch the whole film from beginning to end again, but I did look at it, and it's fascinating how you don't realize how bad a Blu-ray transfer is until a company actually takes care of it, and you're like, oh, this is the way it was actually supposed to look. This looks so much better. Great packaging, awesome special effects. I got it at Orbit DVD. If anyone's in the area, I really recommend them. They order from their site, of course, but their actual store is great too. And then something that I have a weakness for big box sets, ones that won't even fit on my shelf because I don't know what to do with them. And this year was the 50th anniversary of the very first Godfather film, so they put out the big, humongous, like triple box set for that for all three films. And unlike Goodfellas, it actually deserves a big box set like that. But has really cool prints, really well put together, especially from a studio release. Like we talk a lot about boutiques, and for a good reason. They're the ones putting most of the work into this stuff. But Paramount, they care about it, and they show that. Maybe they don't always put out the best stuff, but they put a lot of work into the Godfather set, and it really, really shows. And definitely my number one was something I got at the very beginning of the year in January, which is a Black Baron one-click premium steelbook set of Dr. Sleep. I don't need that movie 3 times, but I have it, and I'm glad I have it. It's a cool box set. I ended up buying it, all the pieces separately, because it was so much cheaper than trying to buy that on eBay as one item. But they may not have matching numbers on like what edition it is, but I'm not gonna cry over it. Really cool. Probably it's gonna be hard to probably ever beat that for me. It's probably one of my favorite releases I'll ever have. But yeah, just a neat set. And as much as I'd like to get into premiums, I'd never be able to afford it like full time. What about you, Chris? What are your 5 for the year?
Yeah, Zach, kind of like you, it's difficult for me to say these are like the favorite pickups from the year, because there's a funny thing happening, I think, in boutique right now, where if you look 5 years back, even maybe even longer, they would find movies that studios would most likely not release and then put it out and do a lot of crazy packaging and marketing to try to make it sound like it was an amazing movie, when when it was first released, the reality is like it just wasn't loved. Or maybe it's like an obscure thing that they found that had never been released before. There's always an angle to it. But I mean, when you're getting Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 put out by Vinegar Syndrome, or next year we have a Medieval Horror coming out from them, right? Like you're moving more and more into the territory of like, it's just whatever movie these companies like. It almost benefits them in a way that the studios aren't putting as much care into physical releases, because now the options of what they can put out are more broad. And like between Arrow putting out, I mean, God, every single month it feels like they put out something that was pretty significant in the theaters. And then Severin, Vinegar Syndrome. So, and then Criterion's putting out a lot of modern stuff that's popular. So yeah, I love it. I can't wait to see what the future brings. The pricing came out for the subscription for Vinegar Syndrome next year, so it looks like it's going to be $9.80 for the year. And the crazy thing is, they're going to have 9 releases just in January alone.
I feel like they worked real hard to try to keep that under 1,000. Like, I know that's probably something they don't want to do.
Yeah. It gets to be, if you live international, I think it goes up to 1,100, but that's because they offer free shipping. So I'm sure they had to figure out a way to cover that cost. But okay, so anyways, I'm gonna do this in there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first one is probably the label that is getting a lot of love right now, and I think rightfully so. I could have probably chosen any release from Def Crocodile, but I went with the Shahram Mokri box set because to me that is like a great example of what Def Crocodile is trying to do. Like they're going to every corner of the world, and they're leaning on Dennis's like encyclopedic knowledge of film and Craig's passion for restoration of these films, and they're putting it together. I could have easily put Solomon King in this list because the story behind the restoration is just amazing. But yeah, the time bending mysteries of Shahram Mokri for me is one. I'm going to stay with partner labels for a while because the film that surprised me the most this year was from a VHS hit fest of all companies. It's called The Corn Shucker. And when we talk about these boutique companies putting out movies that wouldn't otherwise be seen, I mean, this was like in the deep in the dark corners of VHS hobbyists that kind of talked about this wild regional movie called Corn Shucker. And it's It's great. Like it's really good. No business being as good as it is. It was shot for like $100. I mean, I don't know the actual budget, but the budget was tiny, but they just, the way they did it, they spent the entire budget on getting a professional cinematographer, and it kind of shows. Like the movie's really good and really crazy, kind of has a David Lynch feel, and it's just awesome. Um, the packaging alone for Thriller, A Cruel Picture gets it on my list. It's a cool movie. Well, I don't know if that's probably not the best word to use. It's a very interesting movie, and it's a really well-made revenge film. But man, like the care that went into this package from Vinegar Syndrome is just phenomenal. Um, they include the Thriller, A Cool Picture, and they color One Eye. Um, and it's just, yeah, you couldn't possibly have a more like definitive edition of this film with historical context and everything. I want to mention Imprint's getting a little heat right now because their parent company Via Vision. Have you all heard that what went on with that Saw box set that they released? So it was like
No.
all of the Saw films in a case that looked like a bear claw or bear trap. So like it could, like one of those bear traps like clamps down on your feet. But unfortunately, the design looked awesome, but unfortunately, the actual materials they used were cheap, and so a lot of them that shipped international broke. And they did the worst thing that you could do, which is they've gone silent on people. So there was another Instagram video posted about it today, where they haven't heard back from them in like 2 weeks. So I hope they fix that because Imprint's a cool company. I wouldn't want their reputation to be damaged by what their parents doing in Via Vision. But the Wicker Man box set I want to highlight because you talk about definitive editions. This is just, I mean, it's a great movie anyways. I'm not talking about the Nick Cage one. The original Wicker Man is a wonderful movie, but they put out 2 or 3 different versions of the film with a soundtrack, a separate disc that's the soundtrack plus chock full of special features and obviously commentaries and just the full background and context for the production. What a beautiful release. And then I'll end with, we're talking about Rene Claire, we're talking about Dreyer, we're talking about, who's the other one, Adam, that you were talking about? The directors that don't get their due.
Renoir.
Renoir. So Flicker Alley put out a amazing box set. I don't know if they put it out this year or if it was, I think it was early part of this year. But it's 5 discs of a lot of Julien Duvivier's films from the 20s. It has a ton of his movies, both features and shorts, of a huge booklet, video introductions. It has 9 new features that were created. It's kind of like video montages or video appreciations, they're called. And they go through how the painstaking restoration process. They worked with the Cinémathèque Française, they worked with Lobster Films, they worked with CNC. Anyways, they just were all over the place in terms of this is a real labor of love for silent cinema and for early cinema. And I wanted to give some love to the work Flicker Alley's doing because they kind of fly under the radar. People say they're too expensive, and like I get it on both accounts. They put out movies that aren't really on the tip of everybody's tongue, and they ask people to pay $40 for it. So I get it. But the work they're doing as far as restoring the early films is, I just want to call out and throw some love their way because it's second to none.
So last up, then we're just gonna talk about our sort of favorite segments, I suppose. Chris, you might want to do this a little bit different to how me and Zach are going to be doing it. You've obviously been running all the interviews, so if you want to give out, particular interviews that you enjoy doing, in this segment, you can do so as well.
Cool.
I'm just gonna call out a couple of films that I watched for the first time this year that we talked about on the podcast that have really kind of stuck with me. Both those films and then also the discussion around them. The first one, just to give a shout out to, which technically I didn't watch it for the first time for the podcast, but I watched it for the first time this year, and then it happened to be picked for the podcast. And that was The Hitchhiker. We obviously talked about that one recently. Phenomenal film. If it didn't end up in this segment, it probably would have been in my top 5 of the year anyway. I just didn't want to have it twice in the one segment, so I just moved it to this one instead. Phenomenal movie, amazing film. Yeah, there's not much more to be said. Obviously, we had a whole episode about this recently. If listeners, you didn't get a chance to listen to the Women Make Noir episode we brought it a couple of weeks ago, please give it a listen. Really intriguing discussion around this sort of film noir and Ida Lupino, the director. Another film we watched that was really enjoyable and had good discussion was Babylon. We had paired Babylon with Ali Fiorit's The Soul. It was cool to have discussion about, race relations and things like that. Babylon was a really great film that we watched as part of a film club. I think it was your week, Chris, if I remember correctly, in the film club. I think you put a few of those kind of films in, the reggae films, I believe. Was your theme. That was a great film, and we had some great discussion about it. And another one that I enjoyed was Ghost Dog. Again, really, really groovy film, really cool film. Jim Jarmusch, a cool guy. He doesn't always hit with me, as we found out when we talked about another Jim Jarmusch film. I think this one was last year, though, when we talked about what was the one where they're stuck in jail? Is that Day for Night?
Down by Law.
Down by Law. Yes, that's the one. That one didn't hit me as good, but yeah, Ghost Dog was fantastic. And then just a bonus, obviously I didn't watch this for the first time this year, but I'm just going to give a shout out to our Vertigo discussion from the start of the year. I was very surprised about Chris's reaction to Vertigo. I was expecting us all to have a really nice discussion about how great it is. So that's also another one that I think we just had great discussion on, as well as it obviously being the best film ever made. I don't care what Chris says.
Or Sight and Sound. Yes,
exactly. Then just some of the least favorite films I watched this year. Sorry, Chris, 2 of these 3 are your picks. The Orphic trilogy.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, Orpheus. I don't mind Orpheus, the middle one. I don't mind that. That's fine. By all accounts. But the first and the second are tedious. Sorry, Zach Battle Heater.
How could you do that to me?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just have no idea what that film is. I have no time for it. Sorry. And then the last one again is one of Chris's picks, and I forgot we had even watched it. I don't remember anything about it, but I remember it being an absolute slog, and that's Sigourney Weisen, that one.
Yeah. We watched something really good with that. Was that Rainy Dog? Was that when we watched that?
No, we paired that with Long Day's Journey into Night.
Oh, okay. That was actually my pick on the club.
That was your pick, was it?
Yeah, that was my pick on the club. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think you would pick like modern films or something like that. I think that was your theme.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But Chris picked Sigourney Weisen to pair with it, if I remember correctly. Isn't that
right?
Did.
Yeah, he did.
That was
when we were experimenting with that before we got to our format now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those are from what I was just quickly sort of going through the list of episodes we've put out this year, and yeah, those are ones I will never be revisiting for the rest of my life. I've seen Orpheus twice now. I will not be seeing it a third time, along with the other 2 in that series. No, thank you.
Yeah, you go ahead, Zach. I just want to say Sigourney Weisen and Orpheus just barely missed out on my least favorite. So or the Orphic trilogy, I should say. So no love lost there. I appreciate y'all taking these experiments with me.
Mine's actually pretty quick. I did just kind of 1 and 1 for mine, and funny enough, my favorite and my least favorite are on the exact same episode.
Okay.
But before I get to that, I will actually give a shout out to Day of the Outlaw. That's a very recent one, but I loved our discussion for that. That one was a lot of fun and probably one of the best movies we've seen this year. And I'll be happy to know that the other one that I picked is another one of his picks, which is Mulholland Drive. It was not the first time I had saw it this year, or first time I had saw it, but it was. It's always great revisiting. It's always fun to talk about what the hell that movie's about and still come to the end where nobody knows what that movie's about. But that's okay. That's fine. Lynch is weirdly getting a lot more love on this episode than I thought he would. I think he's been mentioned like 3 or 4 times now, so that's been nice and consistent. The one we paired with that was I might get the title wrong. It's like Last Days in Marienbad or something.
Last year in Marienbad. Phenomenal film. I will not have Marienbad's. I will not have Alain Rene slander on this podcast. Phenomenal
so
film.
Pretentious and boring.
Wait, so can I say that in my head I was trying to guess y'all's picks? Zach, that was the one I guessed for you.
If it'll make you feel better, I can just choose Fat Girl. It was so bad that it's on this list this year too. It's just that fucking bad.
Trauma never ends from Fat Girl. It follows you year by year.
You can put images. You can go back at them and put images in yours.
Fuck that film.
Yeah, I'll get a little sentimental. I mean, look, three years ago, long before I had the podcast, I went on to Reddit seeking a virtual film community, hoping to find some discussion there. I know people give Reddit a hard time for being, the bowels of the internet, but I met y'all there, and I've met some other folks that I get to do basically what I set out to do. I can't. I feel very lucky. My job is the very typical day job where I do it to be able to live, and the money's good, but there's very little creativity and imagination in the work, and so like this outlet for me has been amazing, and I want to thank y'all for it. I know we're at 2 years now for sure, right? Are we at is it over 2 years, or is it right under?
We started in December of 2022, of 2020,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we're around 2 years. I can get
right
you the
around.
exact date the first episode came out if you give me 2 seconds. If you want to finish your point, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you the date the first episode came out in the meantime.
Yeah, I just feel lucky that I get to do this. I mean, I think we're consistently over somewhere between 100 to 200 listeners. We've crossed 13,000 in total. Like, this is exactly what we kind of hope to do. So thank y'all. For everybody who's listening, thank you. I do want to try to find a way to engage y'all more. I would really, really love to know who's listening. We have a subreddit called They Live by Film, r/They Live by Film. Like, if you can find a way to engage and just tell us the ones you hate and the ones you love, it would mean a lot, because I just, this is a lot of fun for me. So I appreciate y'all. What did you find the date?
Yeah. Actually, is this an American or European format? Surely it's in European form. It's in American format. Fucking hell. 11th of December 2020. So we are literally just gone past the 2-year mark.
Wow, it's crazy. Yeah, I love it. Anyways, so thank y'all. And there's 2 parts to that. There's the movies, there's the discussions. I loved our discussion on Mikey and Nikki episode. And then Hitchhiker, right? It was the Women Make Noir.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite discussions. I think, if I think about my least favorite, that's also one of my favorite, but for a different reason. Yeah, I think I could have chosen either movie. I went with Mikey and Nikki just because I think I gave an impassioned defense of that movie to y'all at the time, and I continue to we'll try to proselytize for that film. I just think it's fantastic. And then my least favorite would probably be Cure for Wellness. Sorry, Zach. That movie's
I
done.
forgot about that one. Oh, I forgot about that
one.
But that was also a really fun episode. I think this comes out implicitly, but I want to say it out loud. Like, I like the fact that we don't all agree. I think it's very important. And I always feel like this is a safe place to say Vertigo sucks. And like, we have an honest and like interesting discussion about it. And so I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I do like when one of us doesn't like something. Which is why my next round of picks, spoiler alert, is going to be some Godard movies.
Oh God.
Sweet. And just keeping in that spirit, then very quickly, the favorite guest. I mean, talk about choosing between children. I was like, oh man, how am I going to possibly do this? So the way that I did it, I'll just quickly go through this for from a physical release perspective, it's hard to say anybody in the industry does it better than Indicator. So the conversation we had with Anthony Neild over at Indicator probably was my favorite, just from getting time with the mind behind these physical releases that are just everything they do is so good, it's almost boring, if that makes sense. Like the quality is so consistent, so high. It's almost become expected and mundane, which is just the ultimate compliment, even though it doesn't sound like that. The Universal Noir release they just put out and the Robin Hood release they just put out. I mean, everything from the artwork they get to the special features to the historical context, just unbelievable, unbelievable work. And so it was fun to talk to the best. My favorite curator in the game today, now that I know the part of Arrow that I like the most, and now that he's branching off on his own, I think nobody curates better than Fran Simeone right now in terms of content. So that discussion that just dropped, actually, we're recording on the 18th. It just dropped on the Friday, 16th. Listen to that if you haven't. It's really cool. I took a different approach because Ryan over at Disconnected did a film by film breakdown that was, I mean, I wasn't going to do better than that. It's a really good episode. So I took a different approach and got to know Fran the person. And I just kind of dug into like, how do you get that encyclopedic knowledge of film? Like, how do you become Fran Simeone? And he just was very honest and candid about what he did at different stages of his life. And I love the conversation. I think very quickly, Agfa is going to be one of my favorite interviews, just because I feel like spiritually, if I had a label that I would like to start, it would probably be Agfa. I love what the work they're doing in Something Weird. I love the work they're doing. They just put out that beautiful new release of Bat Pussy, which is funny to say out loud, but they really honestly care about these like regional films, and it's a nonprofit, so it's kind of fun to support. And then the last one I'll say is that we have all these streaming options now. And it's cool to hear Joey Long over from Terracotta Distribution. He's trying to start, has started, although right now it's only in Region B, but has started a streaming site specifically for Asian films. So as he builds that, it's going to be a one-stop online shop, well, one-stop streaming service, I guess, for the different countries in Asia, the different genres, and he's built it up into something that is already exciting, but will continue to get better as he works with rights holders to get more and more on the platform. So those are the four that I'm going to choose, although I did honestly love them all.
Awesome. So I think that's going to wrap up our 2022 wrap up episode. As Chris said, thank you to everyone for even listening to us. None of us kind of expected when we first started doing this 2 years ago that we'd be getting hundreds of listeners tuning in to listen to us squabble over movies every week. So yeah, to everyone's listened, thank you so much. As Chris said, the subreddit is there. It's in the link in the description. Come and engage with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the episodes. If you want us to do more of a particular type of episode, even just come and let us know. We'd love to engage with you guys a little bit more. So that's 2022 wrapped up. We're gonna take this episode is due to drop, so you'll be listening to this on the 30th. So we'll be back in the new year with more discussions, more interviews, maybe even a little bit different in terms of special one-off episodes and things like that. Do we want to tell our listeners? We already did this, didn't we? Yeah, we already told our listeners what the first normal episode's going to be. Do you want to give a reminder, Chris, just so in case people didn't get a chance to hear the very end of the last episode?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let me see. I can remember now myself. Hold on, I have it up right here. I always write it down because from week to week I forget. So we are going to start. I kind of joked, or not even joked. No, I said it sincerely. There's some experimental nature to this of what we do, and I'm always trying to push into new genres and new regions. So we haven't had a purely African cinema episode, and I was kind of inspired by some discussions I had heard around some Senegalese films, specifically from Ousmane Sembène. So I dug into that a little bit and found two films from a different director, not Ousmane Sembène, but another Senegalese director. And it's Tuki Buki and then his film Hyenas. So we can do that and have an interesting discussion around Western African cinema, French cinema. And yeah, I can't wait. So I don't know exactly when it'll drop, probably the second week of January, but can't wait.
Awesome. For now, guys, we'll see you then. Have a happy new year.
Happy New Year.